Hello, it's Helen from Journal with Purpose, and I'm really happy to be sharing a video today on the Cult Pens YouTube channel, all about an introduction to creative journaling. I thought I'd start off by sharing with you the inside of some of my journals, and then we can do some journaling together at the end. This journal here is my daily journal. And on the left-hand page, I write a few lines down every evening about the things that have been happening. And on the right-hand page, I usually decorate it and write a little bit more of a summary about the week. And I love using washi tapes, all different kinds of pens, inks, stickers, stamping, anything really which I have lying around on my desk, or perhaps if I want to try out a new creative skill. And I love having this journal to look back through and remind me of all the different things that have happened throughout the course of a year. This next journal I use mainly for creative journaling when I really want to explore a particular topic or how I'm feeling in more detail. And I will often film these videos for my own YouTube channel, just to sort of talk through the process and how I'm documenting those different thoughts that are going on inside my head. This next notebook I use for my bullet journal, and it's a Rhodia goal book. And I use this for planning out projects, my gratitude log and habit tracker. I also keep things like mood trackers, master task lists, and it's really just anywhere where I want to plan things out. I don't use all of these journals every single day. I just think about what I want to document or what I want to plan, and then pick the journal which works best for that. And you can of course use any kind of notebook. I tend to use a mixture of dotted journals and plain paper, but any kind of lined notebook would work absolutely fine. I find that the Rhodia paper is great for a wide range of mediums, so you can use fountain pen ink and watercolour paint, which is really handy. This final journal again is A5 on dotted paper, and I use it for creative journaling in the same way that I did with the thinner notebook. And I tend to use this if I want more space and to be able to try out heavier mediums such as gouache and sticking in pockets and tags and all kinds of different decorative elements. Again, it holds up really well to things like watercolour, stamping, fountain pen inks, and that's something that I definitely look for in a journal. And this is the notebook that I'll be using whilst journaling today. I get asked lots of questions from people about what to write in their journals, how to decorate it, and how to get past that fear of the blank page. So I'm going to try and cover all of that in this video. The first thing I'm doing is laying down some strips of washi tape, and that's a really good way to get past the fear of the blank page. You can get some lovely washi tapes in so many different colours and styles, and as soon as you've put them down on your page, to me it already looks more inviting and like somewhere that you really want to document and get writing. The next thing I'm going to do is write the date on my pages. And for this I'm using a Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen with a firm nib. There are lots of different brush pens available, and I think it's worth trying out a few different brands to find one that works really well for you. And they also come in lots of different colours. For me, the Fudenosuke brush pen is one of my absolute favourites, and that firm nib makes it a little bit easier to control than some of the bigger brush pens. Adding decorative elements to your journal pages certainly isn't essential, but for me it's part of the winding down and shutting my mind off from all of the distractions around me, so it really helps me to relax. I've got out some old book pages and I'm going to tear up the one that I want to use. I really like having a kind of vintage style on my journal pages, so anything from old books works really well for this. I'm just tearing it up to the size that I want it, and then I'm going to glue it onto my page using a glue stick. As an alternative, you could definitely include things like scraps of wrapping paper, napkins, scrapbooking paper, anything that you have lying around. And next I'm going to do a quick bit of stamping, and for this I'm going to use a black ink pad on top of a wooden backed rubber stamp. If you don't have any stamps, you could happily draw out your own images and then use things like coloured pencils, pens or watercolour paint. And it all adds a really lovely decorative element. I'm now going to decorate a tag to include in my journal, and I'm using a pressed flower on top. And you could use things like gift tags, luggage tags, or cut something out of card. And I'm going to make sure that that pressed flower is stuck down initially using another strip of washi tape. I'm going to add a short quote to the back of my tag, but it's also a great place to stick photos on or include some more private journaling that you don't want to be immediately obvious if somebody does look at your journal pages. I'm now going to use one of my absolute favourite techniques, which is creating a wax seal. And this gives a really fun effect to journal pages and of course is great for using on the back of envelopes. I'm adding some wax beads to a melting spoon. You can also get a really lovely range of wax sticks available too. I'm going to light a small tea light candle and then hold the melting spoon over the top until the wax melts. And this can take a little while to happen, but for me again that's one of the joys, because it encourages me to slow down and be patient. You can also try mixing a couple of different colour waxes together for a really lovely effect. Once the wax has completely melted, I'm going to carefully pour it over the stem of that pressed flower. And that will help to keep the flower in place, but really is done for decoration as much as anything. And while the wax is still warm, I will then use the wax seal on top. And again, there's a huge range of different designs available. And you leave that seal on for a few seconds to make sure that the wax has cooled and hardened. And then you can pull the stamp away, leaving that lovely design on your wax. You'll have noticed from when I showed you inside my journals, I use a wide range of different techniques, and I often like to tie the colours in that I'm using to either the seasons or my mood. For my tag, I'm going to tip it onto my journal page, which means adding some washi on both sides so that you create a hinge. And that's really handy because you can still see any of the writing underneath, and you've then got a lovely interactive element on your journal pages. The final decorative element that I will be adding is using some ink to splash it onto my page. I'm using some Pilot Iroshizuku ink in a lovely pinky purple colour, and I'll be dipping my paintbrush into the ink bottle and then flicking it onto my journal pages. It's a really quick and easy way to add a few splashes of colour. And you can of course use any type of ink for this, and also watercolour works really well. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry and want some pretty colours but don't have lots of time to add other decorations, I will simply just add the splashes all over the pages. And again, it already then makes them look so much more inviting to write on. I waited for the ink splashes to dry completely, and I'm now going to start adding my journal writing. And I hope it might be helpful if I run through some of the things that I tend to write about. Every evening I take a few moments to myself to reflect on my day. And sometimes I just write a few lines, and other times I can write for pages. And there's a few typical things that I tend to write about. So for my first heading, I've written, how am I feeling today? For the journal writing, I'm going to be using a TWSBI 580 AL fountain pen. And that's one of the things I nearly always write about. If there hasn't been lots going on for me to document what I've been doing, then I will write about all of the things that I'm feeling. And particularly at the moment, I think it's so useful to get those feelings and emotions out on paper. There's been a huge surge in people interested in journaling, and it's a really helpful, safe space where you can just get all of those thoughts and feelings out of your head. Sometimes I have lots of feelings and mixed emotions that I want to write about, and on other days it might be just one or two words, but I always find just taking that bit of time for myself always makes me feel better. I'm now using a grey zebra Mardliner brush pen to add a strip of colour across my page. And it does make some of that pink ink smudge a little, and I absolutely love that effect. I never worry about little mistakes or happy accidents, as I call them in my journals, because I think they always add to the charm, and there's just something so lovely about seeing handwritten journal pages. The next topic I'm writing about is what am I grateful for? And I actually have a whole gratitude log devoted just to these kinds of thoughts. I find that particularly when things are a bit tough, it can be so helpful to focus on the things that actually you're really grateful for. And sometimes for me it can be as simple as the fact that it wasn't raining when I walked the dog, or technology to stay in touch with people, or eating some really lovely food. And I just find it helps to put you in a much better frame of mind. Next, I'm making a few notes about the things that I'm worried about. And whilst I tend to try and keep my journal pages quite positive, I do find that it's really helpful to get any of those worries and niggles out of my mind. It takes the power out of them somehow for me once they're down on paper. And the next two topics that I'm writing about is how am I spending my time and what am I currently loving. So that could be anything like songs that I'm listening to over and over again, TV box sets that I'm watching, or particular clothes that I'm enjoying wearing. Over time, your journals can become such a lovely way of documenting your own story. I find it so interesting to go back and read through journal entries from a year or so ago, and it reminds me of so many things that I'd forgotten. And whilst this has been a really tough year for so many people, it's also something quite significant, and I think will be really interesting to read through given some time. As final decoration to my journal pages, I'm just adding some dashed lines around the outside of the pages. I really hope that you've enjoyed watching this video and that maybe it's given you some ideas and inspiration to start your own journal. I really think that you'll thank yourself for it in the long run. If you have enjoyed the video, then it'd be great if you leave it a thumbs up. And if you've got any topics that you'd like me to cover in future videos on the Cult Pens YouTube channel, then please do let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching.